Before I start this podcast, I just wanted to quickly comment on the ultimate goal of my channel is to sort of provide a distraction, a little reprieve from whatever is going on in your life. And if that can get through to one person, and if one person can find some benefit in this content, then I feel like my job has been done. I feel like I've done what I've set out to do. So shout out to anyone who's doing it tough at the moment. Doesn't matter where you are. I hope things will get better for you. That's ultimately all I can say. And yeah, stay safe and just keep on keeping on. And things will get better for you. That's ultimately all I can say. And yeah, stay safe and just keep on keeping on. And I said that at the end of the last podcast, but I feel like it needs to be repeated because we're in 2025 now, and things are just still the same. So yeah, it's not been the easiest start to the year. I'll tell you that, for anybody. So please stay safe and continue to spread good things, good positive things, and be positive yourself, because things will get better in the end. That's all I can really say. So with that being said, hello. That's all I can really say. So with that being said, hello. My name is DYNE. Welcome back to the channel if you haven't been here already, or if you have been here already. If you haven't, then welcome for the first time. Welcome to the OTAKU MANFAILURE podcast, where we talk about anime, or try to at least. Today is going to be a very special episode. So, but before I get into that, there's actually a couple of things I wanted to mention. Firstly, I've read the news over the last few days that, well, if you're of the persuasion that it's okay to go to certain websites to watch your anime, you're not really doing that much harm. If you're of that persuasion, I'm not saying anything, because for legal reasons, I should probably admit that no, you shouldn't be doing these things. Don't do them. But for personal, anecdotal reasons, do whatever you want. I'm just not going to provide you the means to do so, because that would be bad if things suddenly took a turn for the worse. As case in point, the massive shutdown of those websites, quote unquote, that we saw last year, the big purge of many popular websites that continue to get shut down because Japan is really cracking down on it. But in spite of all that, sometimes a phoenix can rise from the ashes, and the news has come out this week that one of these particular websites may be the biggest anime streamer in the world as of last week, because okay, it's called, for the sake of clarity, the website is called Hi Anime. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to incriminate myself, and I don't want anything to happen to this site, because it turns out it's really great. I saw it, and I may have perused on it for a little bit, and it turns out it's actually pretty clean. It's pretty clean and runs really well, and it's actually got a ton of stuff. That's how I watched that Itadaki My Santa. May have perused on it for a little bit, and it turns out it's actually pretty clean. It's pretty clean and runs really well, and it's actually got a ton of stuff. That's how I watched that Itadaki My Santa from the last episode of the podcast. That's really the only place I could find it. So I guess it is helpful in finding hidden gems from the past that you can't find anymore because no one wants to distribute them, and it's really expensive to distribute them, or there's certain rights issues that things keep happening. But like I said, for the sake of protecting not only myself but also this good website from potentially getting purged in the future, I'm not going to say anything more. I joke around, but at the same time, this is part because they spread the word, and you don't want to run any risks. But it turns out High Anime has more weekly or more monthly visits than both Disney Plus and Crunchyroll, which is insane. You know, these are the two. Well, of course, Crunchyroll being being basically the king shit of the game, of the anime game, and Disney Plus is one of those little engines that could, so to speak, getting into the anime distribution and streaming market. The little that's offering some good gems. There's quite a few shows on there that I have yet to watch. But that's crazy to me, because it's obviously sending a message, like saying, yep, Crunchyroll influence over the streaming and sort of created a little bit of a monopoly. Hence why there's so many different streamers trying to get into the game now. Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime. I'm not going to say anything about High Dive because it's terrible, apparently. Even though there's, again, a few shows that I really want to watch that are on there. And a few shows in the past that I've had to sort of navigate to various other means to watch because they're stuck on High Dive and I don't want to subscribe to it. I already have enough subscription services in my bank statement already. But yeah, it sends a message that's saying Crunchyroll might be a bit too heavy, and we need some variety. We need a change, and also you guys need to figure out your distribution, because there's a lot of shows from the past like that you can't get anymore. You can't watch because unless it's like super popular, you can't. There's no point in watching it. And you know, sometimes you just want to watch you just want to watch something from years and years ago that's, you know, again flew under the radar or might be a bit terrible, or like Itadaki My Santa was like, I want to watch something old that's Christmassy. Where can I do that? Turns out you can't really do it anywhere. I was gonna watch Tokyo Godfathers, but it turns out the only place you can watch that is on Amazon Prime, and you have to rent it or buy it. You can't just watch it. It's not there. You have to go through some other, you know, shenanigans to get a hold of it, to actually watch it. So, yeah, sometimes the only way to do it is by these. There's some things that need to get worked out, but we're not going to discuss them here. Secondly, I wanted to offer my recommendation for this week. I wanted to do that now, because I read something during the week that I found very curious and also pretty hilarious. So I stumbled upon, just browsing on the internet, this little Korean film from 2003. It's called Save the Green Planet, and it's about a man. It's about this. It's a comedy. It's a comedy movie. It's like a dark comedy. It's about this man, this crazy man, who has convinced that a pharmaceutical CEO, a CEO of a big pharmaceuticals company, because he's convinced he's an alien and he's going to either destroy the world or he's going to send a message to his superiors to let them know Earth needs to be destroyed. And it's basically like think the movie Parasite, where like if the whole Parasite film was just the stuff in the basement, like the violent, that sort of stuff. I think the whole movie is pretty much that, but it's clearly a dark comedy, but it's also like there's some underlying psychological things going on here with our main character. But that's not what got me. What got me with our main character. But that's not what got me. What got me was it has probably, and I read the synopsis of it on Wikipedia because, I just had to. It has one of the craziest, most out of left field twists I've probably ever heard of in a movie. That borders on hilarious and kind of stupid. So and the funny thing, this movie's getting remade this year. It's getting an American remake. It's called Begonia. It stars Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, and it's being directed by the guy who did was it Little Things, Poor Things, the Emma Stone movie, and it's coming out this year. And my recommendation, the guy who did, was it Little Things, Poor Things, the Emma Stone movie, and it's coming out this year. And my recommendation, because I was also looking online and I wanted to see, because I feel like I don't go to the movies enough, and I really want to sort of expand my cinema repertoire, my habits, instead of just seeing, a couple of franchise stuff. I only saw 3 movies this year. I saw Deadpool, I saw Sonic, and I saw the Spy Family movie. All of them really great. But I want to sort of like, I don't know, I feel like there's a certain thing about the cinema that's been like tap into the going to see a movie. I know why it's happened, because going to the movies is really expensive, and streaming is, despite the fact that they keep increasing prices all the time, somehow still cheaper than going to the movies. But I don't know, I feel I'm a bit old school when it comes to stuff like that, like movies, video games, music. Like I want to go to the cinema. I love VHSs and DVDs. I love physical old retro video games. Like I'm still like a little bit of a purist. Like I don't like that everything's going digital. Like I want to like do some more cinema things. I want to like go to the cinemas, and I want to see I just want to go out and see movies, insane premises that are coming out this year. And one of the films that came up was Begonia, this new film that's coming out. And then I read it's based on an old Korean movie, and then I read that up, and I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. So I'm curious if they're going to stick to it, if they're going to really stick to the absurdity of the original film, because I kind of want to see it now, and a bunch of these movies on this list I actually kind of want to see just for the curiosity of it. So my recommendation is actually not a recommendation from me to you. It's a recommendation from me to you to me. Tell me where I can watch this film. Where can I watch Save the Green Planet? To you, it's a recommendation from me to you to me. Tell me where I can watch this film. Where can I watch Save the Green Planet? Because even though I've read the synopsis, I feel like this is a movie that has to be seen for me to truly capture the absurdity of it. So my recommendation for this episode is direct me to a place where I can safely and not so much legally, but safely watch this film with subtitles without it destroying my computer or, having me jump through a bunch of hoops. That's what I want to do. I want to watch this film. It's called Save the Green Planet. And watch out for Begonia, which comes out later this year. So that was that. That was for Begonia, which comes out later this year. So that was that. That was the little things I wanted to get into. But now it's time. It's time to get into serious business because we've been teasing this for a while. And today's the day. 2024 has come to an end. It's been a weird year. But in terms of anime, it's also been, I'd say, a pretty good year. There's been so many good series that have come out. And despite my horrible attention span, I have done my hardest to watch as much as I possibly can before now. And I have compiled my list. I have ummed and ahed, and I have finally done it. And today, it separates the greatest from the garbage. It separates the powerful from the piles of piss. The so goods from the shit houses. This is what I'm calling the ultimate 10. The 10 anime that held my attention span this year the most, that will forever be enshrined into the hall of the ultimate, that will be remembered forever as the anime series that resonated with me the most, that captured my attention, that captured my heart. They will forever be known. Now, I've set myself a little bit of a cutoff date for anime that I've watched, and I actually had to do a little bit of a mad scramble because there was some anime that I wanted to get out of the way before I sort of compiled this list and did this podcast. So there were a few series that I was in the middle of that have yet to be completed. And I feel like I am of the philosophy that I can't really rate something without completing it first, because I'm not getting the full gauge of what a series is. And I don't like it when people rate a series that haven't finished yet, or God forbid, series that have barely started. Like when Oshinoko was voted to the top of my anime list after one episode. And apparently it turned out to be, okay. But I don't like when people do that, it fully without watching all of it and getting a full idea of what it means to you. So the following series have not yet been completed, so their destiny is yet to be foretold. Alia sometimes hides her feelings in Russian. Cute characters, cute show, even though the main character kind of pisses me off a little bit. And it's fairly obvious that Yuki is best girl, who's completely stolen the show and just carried it with her on her back. But again, haven't finished it, so I don't know the extent of where things go. But for the moment, it's okay, because Again, Yuki is best girl. Demon Lord 2099. Things go. But for the moment, it's okay. Because, again, Yuki is best girl. Demon Lord 2099. This is actually not too bad. This is actually pretty good. I'm enjoying it so far. Although, I feel like the main gripe I have with it is that its first arc was resolved a bit too easily and a bit too quickly, I think. For those of you who don't know, Demon Lord 2099 is about a Demon Lord who gets defeated, wakes up 500 years later in a world that has completely changed. It's all like cyberpunk. It's the year 2099. It's all cyberpunk. It's all like futuristic. The little districts of Tokyo have become like city-states, and it's the cyberpunk. It's the year 2099. It's all cyberpunk. It's all like futuristic. The little districts of Tokyo have become like city-states, and and also like the worlds of magic and the worlds of human have combined and merged, and magic people are prosecuted and like and all that sort of thing. So he has to try and navigate this new world with his loyal servant, who's the most devoted cutie patootie. But yeah, so I feel like its first arc was resolved a bit too quickly. And you realize, oh shit, I'm the Demon Lord. I'm more powerful than this. And it kind of like takes a little bit of the struggle. I feel like its first arc was resolved a bit too quickly. And you realize, oh shit, I'm the Demon Lord. I'm more powerful than this. And it kind of like takes a little bit of the struggle out of it. But it's okay. I'm enjoying it so far. Dungeon People. Dungeon People is a cute little show that's unfortunately was on High Dive, so I had to watch it elsewhere. It's about a young thief who is somehow pulled into the maintenance of a dungeon. And the dungeon, it's sort of treated like game mechanics. There's a lot of video game mechanics that I feel like that are in there that kind of dictate the rules of the dungeon. But it's a cute show. It's really not that like high on stakes, but it's a cute little show that I watch from time to time. High on stakes, but it's a cute little show that I watch from time to time. Grandpa and Grandma turn young again. Again, I thought this was going to be really weird, but it turns out it's super wholesome, and the chemistry between the central characters is actually really fun. Jellyfish can't swim in the night. Now, if I had actually finished this on time, because like I said, there was a cutoff date, this probably would have been in the top 10. I feel like it's... I want to talk about this show for a little bit, because I feel like it resonates with me in a way. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. As a struggling creative myself, being a content creator, doing a podcast and doing YouTube videos, why should I struggle like this? People aren't going to like this, so why should I bother? And the central character of Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night is suffering sort of the same thing. In fact, all of the central characters of the show are kind of going through those motions a little bit. So the main character was an artist who painted this like jellyfish mural in the city, and she eventually grows insecure because her friends, she goes to show her friends, and they don't get it, and they laugh at it. And then she sort of hides the fact that she was the one who painted it, and basically just gives up on art and feels very insecure because it's like they're going to laugh at you. Wide Bomber Idol, who's also going through her struggles with trying to get over her past, and they eventually meet and agree that we're going to start a band. We're going to start like an artist collective that releases music. That's the whole point. Without getting too much into it, because I feel like it's spoiling a little bit if I sort of delve more into the characters. But I think it's great. I think it's really great. I'm going to try and finish it as soon as I can, because there's actually a couple of shows in my top 10 that are pretty much based on the same thing. The same thing of trying to get over your past and trying to struggle with getting your name out there and making something and creating something. Booyah. And whenever there's a scene like outside in the city, there's it sometimes, and episode 1 especially did this. It cuts away to other people doing different things around the city, and there's people around and they're all just going about their lives in this sort of neon lit landscape, and it makes you feel like, wow, this environment feels totally lived in. It's, you know, part of the backdrop of the show, and the themes it's trying to get across is this city and how it evolves and how it inspires people, and how it's and sort of you get an idea of the sort of artistry of the show and the artistry of the characters, and sort of you get an idea of the sort of artistry of the show and the artistry of the characters by living in this environment, and how it influences them and how it influences their art. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool. I really love stuff like that, where environments are lived in, and it feels. I just like world building, okay? Because it adds to the realism. Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night. Good show. Metallic Rouge. I'm about maybe 4 or 5 episodes in. I haven't watched it for a while. I think it's okay, but people are saying it's not that great. I've been reading a lot of the kind of falls flat, but I have yet to see. Mr. Villain's Day Off. Not that great. I've been reading a lot of the kind of falls flat, but I have yet to see. Mr. Villain's Day Off. This is a show that's just pure vibes, pure relaxation. And I watched a bit of it earlier last year. And I thought it was fine. Thought it was cute. Thought it was relaxing. The central character is 100% the daddy. And yeah, just tune out. Whenever you want to watch something that's just relaxing, just tune out. And the OP is especially good for that, because it's just pure chill vibes. Okay, we're not trying to take over the world here. We're not trying to spread chaos. We just want to chill out and go look at some pandas, because hey, pandas are pretty cool. But also, it's useful in dealing with grief and dealing with loss, and how we move on and get healthy from that. And what especially got me was the fact that, yes, the central character is a struggling creative who is dealing with the loss of his beloved pet dog. And as someone who has unfortunately lost a couple of dogs over the last year and a bit, over the last couple of years, I 100% get it. And episode 1 may have made me cry pretty bad. But after that, it's not so much like heartbreakingly emotional. It's more positive healing. And also the mushroom pup in particular is just mushroom pup. If you love dogs, brace yourselves for episode 1, but after that, it's probably your vibe. Shoshimin, how to become ordinary. Now, this show, I did start it. It's very, if you like the anime Hyoka, you'll probably like this. It's got pretty much the same thing going on. It's a detective show about detective things that aren't that very detective-y. Just curiosity kind of thing over trivial minor things. It's one of its central characters is a cutie patootie who must be protected forever. To the vibes. So I'm about halfway through it. So I will try and watch that as well. And finally, on this list, 'Tis Time for Torture, Princess. If you remember from a couple of years ago, there was an anime called Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, where a princess was held captive, and pretty much everything is played for laughs, and the princess pretty much treats this demon lord castle that she's kept in like her personal freaking playground, and it's just cute and hilarious and completely devoid of stakes. 'Tis Time for Torture Princess is pretty much that. 'Tis Time for Torture Princess is pretty much that, where the princess, who is actually a formidable and pretty good fighter and warrior, is captured. She's kept in this. She's kept in her cell. She has a talking sword, and they keep trying to torture her to get information about her kingdom. But they do so in like very different and weird ways, like eating delicious food in front of her. So she gets like really hungry, and playing video games in front of her and having fun. So she gets like really hungry and playing video games in front of her and having fun. So, this is really fun. I should spill some information. And then, yeah. So, little trivial things like that. And, of course, any information she does divulge is completely useless to the Demon Lord and his armies, which I suppose is the joke. And it's the joke that continues, but it keeps, like, moving in different places. And it's been confirmed for a season 2, which I guess I have to finish watching season 1 to figure out why. But yeah, it's been confirmed for a season 2, so there is more of this coming. But I guess I have to watch the rest of it to figure out sort of what's going on. So, 'Tis Time for Torture Princess. So those are told. Briefly, okay, before we actually get into the actual list, there is a couple of brief mentions that I wanted to do shout-outs for. So, these are shows that I've completed, but I feel like were okay, or in one case didn't even get a rating. That I just wanted to briefly mention because I thought they were okay. First is Mysterious Disappearances. I thought this show was actually pretty good. It's really good to watch at nighttime, and so I used to watch it. I watched it when I was coming home on the train from work, because it's just like the nighttime vibes. I thought it was pretty cool. I feel like it didn't go far enough with that element, and it could have like expanded things a little bit more, and the ending was also a little bit anticlimactic. So, but I thought it was still a pretty decent show. And also the main characters got huge bazongas. I think that was the main draw for most viewers. So if you haven't seen it already, Mysterious Disappearances, actually check it out, because it's actually not too bad. And next, studio apartment, good lighting, angel included. One room studio apartment, or whatever. So this teenage boy has a one room apartment. An angel arrives on his balcony. Whatever. So this teenage boy has a one room apartment. An angel arrives on his balcony. An angel who has been sent to Earth to learn about humans and to just get to bask in human life, and lands complete happenstance on the balcony of this young teenage boy who lives on his own and goes to high school. Moves in with him. Shenanigans, comedic and cutesy shenanigans ensue. And also there's a harem, if you didn't know, and the harem is all sorts of magical creatures. One of them's basically Elsa from Frozen. One of them's a Kappa. One of them's a little vampire girl. And the other of them's a Kappa. One of them's a little vampire girl. And the other one is the childhood friend who's completely normal and just takes it all in stride. But, of course, really loves the protagonist. Which means she's not going to win. She's not going to win the war. But it's still very cute. The character designs are like really, really cute. And I especially love the Frozen girl. She's what do they call it? A Yuki Onna, I think they're called. Basically like ice people. She basically makes it snow and makes it like she makes blizzards happen whenever she gets like overly emotional. It's kind of like Ice Guy and his cool female colleague from 2023, which was a really good show. It's like that. She makes friends with the protagonist, and she's basically like, "Oh my god, a friend! Oh my god, let's do friend things!" And she's a complete dork, and I love her. So so again, it was okay. And the harem element just crept on us like really quick. And yeah, all the characters are really cute, but it wasn't like groundbreaking or anything. It was just a fine show. And finally, Nijion Animation Season 2. Of course, you know me. You knew I was going to mention something Love Live related. It's Nijion. It's fantastic. I love it. It didn't get a rating because I typically don't rate shorts because, I just rate like proper series. But Saki in particular, this is just some cute little shorts with the little chibi style from the Nijion comics. Go watch it if you love all those things. That was my Saturday morning commute. Like Saturday morning commute was that for a while. I love it so much. And I really hope, despite the trilogy, the finale trilogy of films being in full swing now, because they've released number 1, number 2 is coming. Still haven't heard any news regarding an international release, but the first film has been released in Japan. The second film will be released soon. But I really hope that they announce Nijion Animation Season 3. Just because I need more of it. I just need it in my veins. So those were... Get into it. Into the whole of the ultimates. But before we induct the actual top 10, the ultimate 10, there are two shows that just fell outside the threshold. They scratched and clawed their way towards victory, but ultimately they fell at the final hurdle. And while they are not particularly material required for the ultimate, they are, shall we say, ultimate adjacent. They are good. They are even great. But they're not ultimate. We say ultimate adjacent. They are good. They are even great. But they're not ultimate. First is Suicide Squad Isekai. Now, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was great. I knew there was a lot of hesitation when this series was announced. Like, Warner Brothers is co-producing it. What is this going to be? This is really weird. But you sit down, and I actually sat down and watched it, and I thought, this is probably the best DC or Suicide Squad related thing I've seen. It easily clears both the Suicide Squad films, both of them, or Suicide Squad related thing I've seen. It easily clears both the Suicide Squad films, both of them, I think. It's probably the best DC thing that's come out in a while. Legitimately, it is. It's kooky, it's weird, but it somehow makes it work. It made it work, and it tied everybody in. Like, all of the Suicide Squad, it felt like their presence in this isekai world made sense. And it was really good. The only thing I'd probably put against it is that it wasn't long enough. Like, it was only 10 episodes, which was really weird. And secondly, season 2 announcement, if they're going to do more episodes, those plot threads and those cliffhangers are just left there. And I feel like that needs to be rectified if they're going to do that, because then what's the point? So, Suicide Squad Isekai, ultimate adjacent. The second one is Windbreaker. Now, Windbreaker, again, I actually thought was pretty good. It's one of those. It's not Shonen Jump, but it's definitely got all the vibes of a Shonen Jump show. And I didn't watch Tokyo Revengers. I didn't watch Jujutsu Kaisen. I didn't watch. Yeah, there's heaps of those shows I haven't watched. List them by name here because I can't think of them. But I enjoyed this because it reminds me of the Yakuza games in a weird way, because it's that clear gang mentality, and there's clear boundaries, and there's clear dynamics and power dynamics going on. I thought the animation was really good. Like, the fight choreography was actually pretty fun. It's a pretty good show, and it's got a great opening as well. Like I said, the only things I'd hold against it, I didn't necessarily resonate with all of the characters. And pretty good show, and it's got a great opening as well. Like I said, the only things I'd hold against it, I didn't necessarily resonate with all of the characters and their struggles. And especially in the Shishitoran arc, which, one, I felt was far too long. And second, I didn't necessarily resonate with all of the characters' like backstories and their motivations and their emotional struggles that were elongated and explained thoroughly and played for really dramatic emotional moments that it didn't work for me. And we are getting a season 2 later this year. Emotional moments that it didn't work for me. And we are getting a season 2 later this year. We've had to wait over a year because it also ended on a sort of cliffhanger, on a like, okay, we're moving to the next arc now. And we've had to wait over a year for that, but we are getting more Windbreaker this year. So hopefully this next arc, it will improve on what came before it. But what came before it, I thought some of the characters were pretty good. Some of them weren't. But the arcs were structured like really weirdly. And that Shishitoran arc was too long for a 12-episode series. That took up way too much time. Arcs were structured like really weirdly. And that Shishitoran arc was too long for a 12-episode series. That took up way too much time, and everything else sort of fell by the wayside. So, but all in all, I thought it was fun. Like, I especially loved the fight. The fight scenes are really good. So, Windbreaker, I should probably read the manga as well, because it's on K-Manga. So, I should probably read ahead and see what happens. But I feel like it's not going to be the same because, you know, you're reading a manga where everything's still, watching an anime where the fight just flows. You know, I enjoy that more. I enjoy when things flow. Like, I just love watching a fight sometimes when it's really good. So, yeah, Windbreaker. Ultimate adjacent. Alright, knots from the hots. And the hots are coming. But now, yes, it is time. The 10, the ultimate 10, that are to be inducted into the whole of the ultimate. And we start with number 10, of course. Now, one of the things you have to know about me is that, you know, suffering from depression and suffering from pretty bad anxiety, it's common to find sort of an escape in the little things. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that, you know, I've found it comes with when you find that I'm scrambling my words, but shows that combined those niche hobbies with almost like found family or found friends and just healing through doing that. Just getting yourself into a hobby and doing it with people you've come to know and you've come to care about that are just here for a good time. And there's a show from 2022 that I especially loved that's holds this philosophy pretty high. It's called Slow Loop, and it's about a young girl. Or there's these two young girls whose parents remarry. The main girl is still recovering from the loss of her dad, and she is into fishing. And the show is basically about these two girls and other friends they make along the way, basically just coming together and just getting to really know and care about each other through fishing. And again, it was a show that had fishing in it, but was ultimately about found family, about overcoming grief, and sort of healing through doing a thing. And so number 10 on this list elicits the same philosophy. Ultimately, it's about recovering from your trauma, recovering from whatever you're feeling, just doing it with people you've met and have come to know, and doing it with fishing. So number 10 in the ultimate 10, negative, positive angler. I ended up really enjoying this show. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, it starts. I ended up really enjoying this show. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, it starts quite grimly. Like episode 1, well, the first half of it anyway, is actually really freaking sad. It actually starts like the first scene is a failed suicide attempt. Like our main protagonist tries to hang himself, and of course it's played for laughs. Like he falls on his butt and ultimately fails. He's in a ton of debt because he left home to strike out on his own. Is pretty much a failure in all aspects. Got into a huge amount of debt with these loan sharks, and then this is cancer. And yeah, how are you going to get through all that? How are you going to overcome this? And he eventually, through certain circumstances, meets an eclectic cast of characters who are employees of like a convenience store that sort of live together, hang out, and are basically a fishing group. And he slowly comes to terms with his lot in life through the art of found family and fishing. And I'm not going to spoil how it ends. I'm not going to do much to spoil like any of these shows, because obviously I think they're good and you should go out and watch them. But it was very knowledgeable, and this is where Slow Loop kind of didn't hit enough. This show has a lot of knowledge about the craft of fishing. Like, it is, if you're into fishing at all, you will enjoy this because it speaks to you. It's got so much knowledge about the species of fish and where they congregate and in what type of conditions, and the perfect time of day, the perfect weather you have to be to catch these fish, what reels you should be using, what lures you should be using, It has a lot of like inside. It's very inside baseball, but it does it in a way that doesn't talk down to the audience. Like it tries to, like with our main protagonist, it slowly integrates him, and so it's very inside baseball, but it does it in a way that doesn't talk down to the audience. Like it tries to, like with our main protagonist, it slowly integrates him and gives him useful advice and knowledge. And I feel like that's what it's doing with the audience as well. It's teaching you about fishing, and yeah, go out and fish. Go out and just enjoy. And it says, the disclaimer at the start of every episode is, make sure you're fishing illegal. Make sure you're fishing legally. You're doing it responsibly, and all that sort of thing. So it does, in a way, want you to go out and fish, and I want to do that at some point. I used to fish a little bit when I was a kid. Fish, and I want to do that at some point. I used to fish a little bit when I was a kid, but did not do it at all in my adult life. And I'm getting to that age where I'm interested in dad hobbies, even though I'm not a dad. But I'm into sort of adult man hobbies like fishing and golf and darts and DIY, dad things. And I actually, for the longest time, I've said I want to buy a boat. I just want to buy a boat so I can go out and do fishing. I don't know why. It's just shows like Slow Loop and Negative Positive Angler have said fishing's pretty great. You should go do it. And I might. So there you go. Negative. Now apart from being a depressed and anxious man who's getting into dad hobbies, I'm also a man who's desperately lonely. And a man who has anime has sort of rubbed off on me a little too much, I think. Look, some of us are lonely out there. We've all dreamed of, owning our own, like, robot wife who can, do things for us and love us and just something to come home to, And they said by 2025 was the year that it's heavily implied. The show is My Wife Has No Emotion. And this is probably the one show on this list that is hear me out. Because you look at the premise and you think, this is weird. But trust me, hear me out, it's actually good. And I'll explain why. So the premise is, we live in a world where robots are like human-like and can do things for you. And there are robots that can be companions. There are robots that can do chores. There are robots are fully integrated. Androids are fully integrated into society. And so this one man he's just a salary man. He's got no one to come home to. He's a bit of a loser. He orders himself a robot housemaid who can do cooking and cleaning and takes care of his health. All that, what robot housemaids do. He eventually grows attached to this robot, and he convinces it to act as his proxy wife, I guess. And this robot is like, because this robot is like the cheap one. It's a cheap, it's a cheap model in this like particular series of robots that is only it's a cheap model in this like particular series of robots that is only doesn't, because there are robots in this world that are basically act like exactly like humans. Like it's the series, like the top of the line in this series of robots that our robot wife is from is pretty much like your big titty, is pretty much just a big titty anime girl, but as a robot. Because there's a side character who has a robot who's basically big titty anime girl, and they're like the top of the line. And our robot wife that our protagonist has is the cheaper model. They don't talk. They talk, but they don't move their mouth. They don't really have that much movement, like human style movement. Is the cheaper model. They don't talk. They talk, but they don't move their mouth. They don't really have that much movement, like human style movement. They don't have any skin. They just have it's just their face, but the rest of her is just robot, metallic. Yeah. So, and people keep questioning, why would you get this one? Why would you get this cheap one? Why not just get a top of the line one that's basically human? And he keeps saying, no, this is my robot wife. I love this one. I don't care. And that's the show. It's just him teaching her about, what it's like to be that she's developing emotions. It's kind of implied. And this is basically it. It's just a romantic slice of life about a guy who just wants to live just a happy life with his robot wife. And it turns out it's surprisingly wholesome. There's no sexy shenanigans going on. There's no I don't think he ever thinks about it once. For real. He's probably the most innocent, naive man you could meet. The guy is a bit of a weenie, but he's also a gentleman. He's also wholesome. And his relationship with his robot wife is even more wholesome. And I would like to see more of it. I hope they do announce a season 2, because my wife has no emotion. Number 9 in the Ultimate 10. Number 8. Now, there's not really much that can be said about this show that I haven't already said, because number 8 on this list is a show I've already talked about on this podcast. It's a show that, again, struggles with moving on from your past and trying to, get by in this world of where social media and creativity and content creation has become this huge global beast. So much so that it's become one of the most desired careers of young people. And trying to just be successful online whilst struggling with all sorts of crap. Of just how batshit YouTube and content creation can be sometimes. But also ultimately deals with, other underlying things that are going on. And that desire to feel wanted, that desire to feel heard, and trying to brush off negativity. And doing so whilst acting like a little shit gremlin surrounded by a bunch of colourful and wacky vampires. So Again, I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna delve into it because I've already done that. If you want to find out my true opinions on My Knuckle Punch, I suggest you watch episode 1 of this podcast, where I do a deep dive into the show. Because at the time, it was a show that I just finished, and I just wanted to talk about it. So there you go. Go watch episode 1, where I talk about this show in detail. But just know that it was my 8th favorite show from this year. All right, those were the pretty goods, but now we're getting into the pretty greats. From here on in, every show that I mentioned on this list are shows that I connected with on a deeper level. I connected with for various different reasons, just absolutely adored and loved. And we start with number 7. Deeper level. I connected with for various different reasons, just absolutely adored and loved. And we start with number 7. Now, when I got out of, not long after I got out of high school, I got into, my career path was graphic design. I got into graphic design, and when that didn't work out, this was around the time when I first fell into depression. And not long after that, because I'd already had a part-time job in hospitality, I pursued a hospitality career. My passion was bartending and mixology. And in hospitality, I pursued a hospitality career. My passion was bartending and mixology. And obviously it didn't work out. But I always, even to this day, still have a fondness for the art of mixology. And not so much for the drinks, although that is a big, I guess the joy, my joy out of mixology is not so much being a part of the craft, but being the consumer on the other side who gets to witness the craft, who gets to experience the craft, who gets to partake and see the results of the craft in all of their glory. That's sort of the joy I get out of it. Witness the craft, who gets to experience the craft, who gets to partake and see the results of the craft in all of their glory. That's sort of the joy I get out of it now. Consuming alcohol, but doing so in a way where I feel more appreciative of it. Not like old me, like in my, fresh out of high school and in my early 20s, where I just wanted to get drunk and just have fun, just drink. Now I feel more appreciative of it. And one of the joys I find in my current job is getting to talk to people and getting to learn of their motivations, getting to learn of their habits, getting to learn a little bit about them. And one of my interests and one of my sort of passions in my professional work is tourism psychology, and learning the push and pull factors of how people travel and why they travel, all that sort of thing. So the whole idea, and it all comes to the idea of talking to people and learning just a little bit about their lives and doing what you can in your field of expertise to assist with that, to sort of change that a little bit. Number 7 on this list combines all of those elements I just mentioned. It combines the craft of mixology. It combines the craft of psychology, and it combines the craft of healing and learning. Number 7, bartender, glass of God. I haven't watched the original bartender anime from a while back. I heard it was okay. I should probably at some point go back and watch that. But to me, this remake, having never seen anything in the bartender franchise before, was calming to the soul. That's what I'll call it. It was pure, yes, I need this. I needed this. And for the reasons I mentioned, for the reasons it combines all of those elements of this guy knows a lot about about how to mix drinks, but he's doing so in a way that's not. He's paying attention to every single one of his patrons, but he's doing so in a way that's not. He's paying attention to every single one of his patrons, and what they need, and what they want. Just through the simple act of conversation and observation, and he's crafting each and every single drink individually to the situation. That was what I found calming about this, and learning and resonating with the characters that come through to the bar, and you hear of their stories, and you see how, even for just a little moment, these drinks feel better. Now, while there's plot going on with the central characters, the man behind the bar, there's stuff going on with him, but ultimately that becomes the plot of the central characters becomes kind of pointless, I guess, because ultimately it's about they're simply observers in this bigger world. And okay, I wanted to briefly gush about the two characters that I love the most, because I think it's probably one of the most wholesome parts of the show. And I really want to see more of these particular characters, because I don't remember names so well, but I have to. Here we go. So there's okay. So I'll read the plot synopsis of the. I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now. I have to read the plot of this particular episode. So Yukari Higuchi announces suddenly that she is to be married, much to the surprise of her friends. Meanwhile, Hayase, a manager at an industrial machinery company, is under pressure at work. When he encounters a woman smoking in Eden Hall, which is the central bar, he acts uncharacteristically rudely towards her. When he visits again and apologizes, Ryu, who's the central character, invites him behind the bar so that he can share some information about the woman's situation as a co-worker. Yukari confesses to Ryu that she only announced her engagement to please her ailing grandmother and realizes it was for the wrong reasons. So, and they connect. Yeah, they connect. They basically connect through. They connect through cigars. That becomes their thing. They sit in the corner and they smoke cigars, and it turns out this is really it's really wholesome, and it's clear that there's a romance sort of developing there. And the best thing about it is that in later episodes, you see them in the background. You see them in the background, just in the wholesome. And I've never like been one of those people that's like, yes, I'm not like really that into shipping, so to speak. Like, I'm not really a shipper guy, but I've never looked at two adults, two working adults with real world adult problems and said, yes, these two need to get together, they need to get married, they need to have babies, they need to live forever, they need to live together forever. Yes, 100%. I've never wanted that for two characters more. And it's purely just from seeing them in the background of later episodes. Episodes that have got nothing to do with them. They're just there. And that's when I realized, yeah, I want this to work. These two are my favorites. So that's my little episodes. Episodes that have got nothing to do with them. They're just there. And that's when I realized, yeah, I want this to work. These two are my favorites. So that's my little tangent, my little rant about this show. But ultimately, Bartender was this show that it didn't matter what the main characters were doing. All that mattered was the impact they were having on other people and the impact they were having on the world that they were in. Especially Ryu, like being this shit hot bartender who has the secret to the glass of God, who can make just every drink perfect for every person. But yeah, it's a bit like Mary Sue, you think. Like, it's a unique anime power. But it's one that... Like, it's a unique anime power. But it's one that is ultimately beneficial for the people that he meets and for the people that he serves. And that's what I loved about this show. About how people, just ordinary people going through their daily lives, struggling in some cases, just finding a little bit of solace, finding a little bit of peace. And it's not like, finding happiness at the bottom of a bottle, like that kind of twisted situation. It's just, you just go into the bar just to unwind, just to have a drink. And you find you can navigate the next day a little bit better. Because you think, yeah, things aren't so bad. That's ultimately what makes this show great. The Bartender, Glass of God. Various other things involved in this franchise, because I enjoyed this show very much. And the reason why it's so low on the list, despite everything I just said, is because there are 6 shows that I resonated with more on for various reasons. So, number 6. So what would you... I want to ask a question. What would you do if your perception of reality just completely changed? Like, would you give up? Or would you try and make peace with mistakes you've made in your past, the regrets that you live with? Would you make peace with them and try to soldier on in a future that may seem uncertain? That's the underlying theme of this show. You wouldn't know it at first, but there are some underlying things here that really put things in perspective. Number 6 on my list, Train to the End of the World. Otherwise known as Doomsday Train or Shumatsu train, but I'll probably refer to as Doomsday Train because that's the more colloquial name for this show. So 7G is a thing. Colloquial name for this show. So 7G is a thing. We don't know how far this is in the future. We've only just recently, in the last few years, gotten 5G. And if people think 5G was bad, you know, whoa, boy. Like if 5G, if the conspiracy theorists and the absolute nutcases are right, and 5G is bad and causes COVID, then, oh boy, they're not going to like what 7G is. 7G is going to completely distort reality completely. And that's what happens in this show. A man invents 7G internet connection, and it completely destroys. But ultimately, that's not what the show's about. Despite that. It's about a group of young girls who, again, facing an uncertain future in this post-apocalyptic world, I guess, if you could call it that. The main character needs to reconnect with a lost friend. And they are in... Basically, the entire anime takes place on the Ikebukuro line. The train line. That's what the whole thing's about. But normally the Ikebukuro line is, I think, about maybe an hour and a half, like, across the line. Not anymore. Now, with reality completely destroyed, completely different, absurd environment all of its own. Like, its own ecosystem, its own laws of nature, its own laws of everything. And you have to... They find... the girl finds and learns how to navigate this abandoned... Like, operate this abandoned train. And she's going to go to all the way to Ikebukuro to reconnect with a lost friend. A friend that she had a falling out with. And... because she has to, before the inevitable happens and the fates of these characters become all too real. Like, no regrets. Like, soldier on and try to move on from your past in an uncertain future. It is... As we navigate from station to station, as our 4 central girls navigate from station to station, everything is completely different in each one. There's a... They live at the end of the line in a village where everyone has turned into... or everyone turns into an animal when they turn 21. Like an anthropomorphic animal. And then they eventually lose all human sentience and just become animals just outright. There's a world of sentient angry goat men. There's a one where a creepy village where people have mushrooms growing on their heads, and they're going slowly brain dead. It's set like entirely in a manga, like it's a manga, a tokusatsu manga, a magical girl manga, and the entire city is just basically living out this manga, but things have changed. There's a station they get to where they suddenly are itching. They itch all over the place. There's the very next station after that is they just live out their traumatic their deepest, darkest, most traumatic moments of their past, like as visions. And that's ultimately where you get into more darker territory and sort of motivations of the characters and experience their past a little bit. Traumatic pasts that for at least the non-darker territory and sort of motivations of the characters and experience their past a little bit. Traumatic pasts that for at least the non-protagonist aren't explored enough and really could have been fleshed out a little bit more. But that's a thing that happens. There's a part of the train line that's just completely, it feels like it's in deep space. There's they get to a station in like sort of inner Tokyo where they fight against a trio of mangaka, and they have manga powers, and one of the central girls also gets manga powers, and it's so dumb but so great. There's just so much. Everything is different. Reality has just been completely shifted in so many different ways, and it's one of those things that has to be watched to be believed. And the character I just mentioned, Akira, her name is probably the best character in the show, because she comes with just a cavalcade of deep cuts and references to other things, and it's so great. And she's a little adorable munchkin, and I love her. But ultimately, despite all the absurdity happening, the show is ultimately about the protagonist and her lost friend, and the falling out that they had, and maybe all of this is a metaphor for their lost friendship and how their reality has changed because of their falling out. Maybe it's it's the underlying themes are a bit more like, they become very much like metaphors the more you get into it. But ultimately, it is a show that is about facing your past and moving on towards an uncertain future. And ultimately, that's where the show ends. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, but it's completely left up to interpretation, and we will face it together. And we will ride off on the train into the sunset for whatever the future may bring. And ultimately, that's the show. But the reason I loved it so much was because of that absurdity and how it makes it all work. And it's trippy, it's hilarious, it's just that absurdity and how it makes it all work. And it's trippy, it's hilarious, it's just profound, it's crazy, and it was great, and it's fantastic. Train to the End of the World. Watch this show. If it's so bizarre, but in such a good way. I don't know if there's going to be a season 2. I don't think there should be, ultimately, because that would ruin it. And while there are so many, I have so many questions as well. Like, how can cellular technology cause reality to completely blow apart? How has Japan actually gone, like, enlarged in size, cause reality to completely blow apart? How has Japan actually gone, like, enlarged in size, or is it just in our mind's eye? Why are the stations so far apart? Why are there so many different ecosystems and environments? Has Japan actually grown? What's happened to other parts of Japan? We see vaguely mentions of other train lines, but what's happened to them? This is Ikebukuro. what's happening in Shibuya, what's happening in Shinjuku, what's happening in Akihabara, what's happening in other cities in Japan, what's happening around the world. Is it just Japan? Is it just Tokyo? Or is it Japan? Or are other countries going through this? Has 7G completely destroyed everything in the world? Is it just Japan? Is it just Tokyo? Or is it Japan? Or are other countries going through this? Has 7G completely destroyed everything in the world? Like, you got so many questions that are never going to be answered. But ultimately, that's not the point. Just watch the show and you'll see what I mean. Train to the end of the world. Number 5. Number 5 is purely here because it's just fun. I love shows that, like, I enjoy shows that are absurd and have profound themes and leave you with a lot of questions that make you curious and are just exciting. But ultimately, because I am a depressed, lonely man, I just enjoy shows that just... Because I am a depressed, lonely man, I just enjoy shows that just... It's just about everyday people just living everyday life. Just going about it. Just good vibes all around. And I feel all shows are capable of that. Everyone's capable of just good vibes. Just going through your life. Even if you're a princess from an isekai world. Number 5 is A Solid Bowl of Eccentrics. Now, if you've seen this channel at any point over the last year, you know that I really enjoyed this show. In fact, my most popular video on this channel concerns A Solid Bowl of Eccentrics, and in particular, one particular character. The podcast has gone for an hour and a half so far. I feel like this is going to be a lot longer. Because this is a very important episode, because we're talking about the top 10. So this is going to be a lot longer than normal, but that's not going to be a thing going forward. So the premise of the show is a little princess from a fantasy world is on the run or is being persecuted. She runs into a portal that takes her to modern day Japan, like the real world. And her vanguard, her confidant, also follows suit. And the show is at the beginning, and this little girl and private detective who works as a private detective, and eventually, sort of gets integrated into his life. The plot starts out with this little isekai girl trying to navigate the modern day world, but episode 4 comes with an all-time fantastic twist on the isekai genre. And after that, it just becomes about these two characters and this other character who also comes to Earth and tries to navigate life on her own, has a completely different way of doing it. All sorts of shenanigans ensue with her. I will talk about her in a bit. But and also all of the other characters that they... Kooky people just living ordinary lives. A solid bowl of eccentrics. And how it all gels together and is just fantastic. This was the show that was just... Yeah. I loved it because it was just ordinary. It was just ordinary life. But with some good twists and some good kooky characters along the way. And there's not really much I can say other than that, because it's a show that's eventually becomes about nothing. It's a show that's no stakes at all. Just wholesome and very, very, very good and very enjoyable, and I loved it. Yeah. That's really all I can... Just wholesome and very, very, very good and very enjoyable, and I loved it. Yeah. That's really all I can say about it without getting too much into the show itself. But, again, you should watch it. Because if you enjoy shows like that are just pure slice of life, then you will watch this. You will enjoy it. A solid bowl of eccentrics. Now, I thought that was going to be my favourite show this year, but I was clearly wrong. That came early in the year. The shows that came after, like, we're getting into some real serious, like, territory here. Number 4 is, again, a slice of life. Again, a show that is ultimately devoid of slice of life. Again, a show that is ultimately devoid of stakes, but is just the chemistry between characters. It's wholesome, it's fun, and it's just absolutely pure. Now, we see a lot of... There's so many goddamn harem shows out there, like... So many. It's become just as... It's just as oversaturated as isekai has become in the last, like, 10 years. But it's because people really enjoy it, I guess. But the whole point of these shows is just an ordinary guy somehow falls into the lap of all these shows. Is that, well, I mean, you can't have all of them unless you're the protagonist of 100 Girlfriends, in which case you can have whatever the hell you want because you're God. But in most harem situations, it doesn't work out. Someone has to win, someone has to lose. But what if? What if you didn't have to go through that? You didn't have to suffer the indignity of losing a harem war. What if you could harness the power to be everything at once? What if you had the capability, character trait, but all of the character traits in one very adorable package? That's what this show is. Number 4 is pseudo harem. This is purely for the chemistry of these two characters, of the central 2 characters. There is nothing else in the way. There is no I mean, there's a tiny little bit of drama, but it's not like anything bad. What if there was a show that was purely fueled by the chemistry of its... What if there was a show that was purely fueled by the chemistry of its central couple, its central pair, and it was so wholesome and so pure and so strong that that's all you need. That's what the show is. That's what it was to me. It's about two high school characters who are in the drama club, and their whole thing is acting, and they slowly just come together through their love of acting and just being a wholesome pair. That's it. That's all there needs to be for this show to be fantastic. It was just one of the most wholesome and just happy, pure romances that I have ever watched. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And it sucks that it's over, because I know there's not going to be a season 2, because the manga only lasted for 6 volumes and there's really not much else they could do. But I wish it would keep going, because I just love these two characters so much. One in particular that I'll talk about later. And that's why I'm not getting into the force of the show without getting into what I'm going to be talking about later on. But for now, it is one of the most wholesome romances of all time. Pseudo harem, so good. Watch it. If you love romance, if you love slice of life, watch this show if you haven't already. Okay. Now it's time to get into really, we're getting towards the pinnacle. We are on the podium now. The following 3 shows are the cream of the crop. They are the best shows of the year, at least to me. They are the best shows of the year, at least to me. Number 3. Now, I talked about struggling to move on from one's past and find peace in the future. I've talked about what it means to struggle as a creative, as an artistic person in the modern world. I've talked about what it means to find other like-minded people who share the same passions, but it's not always easy trying to navigate those relationships. This show is the pinnacle of those things. This show is the pinnacle of those things. I talked about it briefly on the podcast before, but I'm going to go in depth here. Number 3, Girls Band Cry. This show came out in January of this year. I wasn't able to watch it until the last couple of months because it was not available anywhere. It was only available through, I think you could rent it somewhere, or you could watch it for free on some website if you had a library card in America. I don't know. But it certainly wasn't on any of the major streamers, that's for sure. It was released on Crunchyroll just a couple of months ago, and I finally got to watch it. Had it not been for piracy sites, people actually getting to experience this week to week, I finally got to sit down and watch it, and I think it's absolutely amazing. I mentioned in my episode 0, my introductory episode to this podcast, I talked about Girls Band Cry briefly. I described it as a 2.75D anime. And what I meant by that was it's in 3D. Like the main characters are in 3D, and usually CG anime, 3D anime isn't very good. Toei have somehow cracked the code because the characters move with such fluidity and such crazy animation that it's ridiculous that we're pretty much in 2D, and the main characters, the central characters, are in 3D, and it blends together perfectly. That's why I call it 2.75D, because it's clear it's skewing more in the 3D direction. It's not 2.5. It's skewing more in the 3D direction, but it's doing so with such a fluidity. The animation in this show is fantastic. That's just one thing. Again, the world around them feels kind of lived in. Not like jellyfish can't swim in the night, but still, you get a bit of a vibe out of. They're in Kawasaki. They're not quite in central Tokyo. They're just outside of it. They're in Kawasaki. It's set in Kawasaki, but it's still pretty great. It's not every episode as an insert song, but some of them do, and the animation also helps that the animation is so good because it makes the music performances so much better. But ultimately, what this show is it's about the drama. Now, this comes from the same director who directed... I'm pretty sure he directed most, if not all, of the Love Live anime series. And he was he's working with one of the major writers of Love Live Sunshine. They are directing and writing this show at this new studio under Toei. And if you watch Love Live Sunshine at this new studio under Toei. And if you watch Love Live Sunshine, it's pretty much like the same kind of deal. Like, they're not trying to save their school. They're just young people with hopes and dreams that just want to just get by. But what sets them apart is that they are complete messes. It's real. That's ultimately what this is. The relationship between our band it feels real. It feels grounded. It comes with struggles of trying to coexist as a band while also it feels real. It feels grounded. It comes with struggles of trying to coexist as a band while also trying to make it. And each and every one of you is also suffering from your own fears and insecurities and trauma. But somehow in the end making it work. And just trying to live a more positive life whilst making your hopes and dreams come true. And that sounds melodramatic, but that's ultimately what this show is. Again, might be spoiling my next segment with this, but I will talk about the characters in a bit. Again, might be spoiling my next segment with this, but I will talk about the characters in a bit because that is important to what I want to do later. But for now, Girls Band Cry places third on the Ultimate 10. Number 2. Delicious in dungeon. I'm not going to preamble. I'm not going to say, do a little bit of banter before I reveal. Because there isn't a show like this, I don't think. At least not done this well. Done this well. Delicious in Dungeon is just... what can I say? It combines so many elements that I love about anime. Ultimately, it's about a cast of characters, a cast of eclectic characters that gel well together and provide just a hilarious amount of chemistry. It combines an environment that is, it feels lived in, and the world building is done in such a way that you truly understand the eco. It delves into backstories where you see what kind of impact that the dungeon and its ecosystem has on people, and in particular our central characters, and how important that is. And of course it has the food. It takes an absurd thing. We're going into a dungeon, we don't have food. What are we going to do? We're going to kill and carve up and eat any monsters that we find. And it goes meticulous recipes, that are done like instruction for instruction, and it comes out like, here's the meal that we made from these monsters that we found. Exotic, and obviously it's delegated into sections, and it just repeats ad infinitum, but it doesn't do so in a way that feels very samey. Everything develops. The monsters become more dangerous. The monsters become more perilous. The environments become more difficult to navigate. They become more unpredictable. You learn more about how the dungeon is structured and how it affects our characters and how it affects the world around them. And the world building, man, is just... I've never seen a show like this that is devoted so much of its attention to making sure that this just beautiful. There's a certain beauty in it as well. But it does come down to the characters. Again, ultimately it comes down to the characters and how they navigate this ecosystem. And I'm going to talk about one character later, but I do want to mention two other characters. So our central party, the main protagonist is Laos. He's a human. He starts out as he's just your cookie cutter human sword wielder, protagonist man. But then you find out, and this is what I discovered, I think Laos may be autistic. Because he has this fascination. This is what I discovered. I think Laos may be autistic. Because he has this fascination with monsters, and when they eventually think, oh, we're going to eat monsters, his curiosity just goes leaps and bounds, and he's duty bound. He's a himbo with a heart of gold, but he just becomes more and more weird, and people find him annoying. People find him off-putting because he's just, oh my god, what's this monster taste like? Blah blah blah, and he may be neurodivergent, but it's done so in such a funny way that I can't help but adore this man for his just for just how kooky he ends up being. He's not your cookie cutter protagonist. He's actually a bit of a weirdo. I can't help but adore this man for his just for just how kooky he ends up being. He's not your cookie cutter protagonist. He's actually a bit of a weirdo. He's a himbo with a heart of gold who's just a little bit weird, like really weird, but you can't help but love him. So that's Laios. And the other character I wanted to talk about was Senshi. Senshi wasn't part of the party originally. They meet him in episode 1, and he's the kooky dwarf who introduces them to the world of monster cooking. And you think, okay, this guy's a bit weird. He knows a lot about this. And he eventually joins the party. And is like, yeah. And like becomes that sort of that character who knows a lot, and it's not until very, very late in the show that you find out his like past, his motivations, the reason why he is the person he is today. But ultimately he's like sort of kind of like the beating heart of the show, because he is the one that introduces us to the gimmick of the show, and carries throughout based on that. And he's also, I watched the dub as well. He's voiced by ProZD, which is awesome. Fantastic voice actor. But he was really good in this. I watched the dub. It just happened to, when I turned it on Netflix, it was like, okay, yeah, the dub, this is fine. And yeah, Senshi is voiced by ProZD, so shout out to ProZD. You did a fantastic job with this character. This was the show that I enjoyed for what it's with the sort of what it tried to it's tried to step outside the box of the typical fantasy fare, and it did so in a funny and absurd way, and made it all work, and made it all feel like it, again, made it feel lived in, but did so in a way that was like combined high fantasy with this absurd yet very interesting logic. It's grounded in logic, but it does so in a unique way. It does so in its own way, and I love it for that. And I know there's more episodes coming because they left it on a cliffhanger. Very, very good show. Very well done by Studio Trigger. Again, want to mention that it's not their wheelhouse. Like this, they don't do fantasy. They don't do like stuff that's more grounded like this. They do absurd crap that ends with a giant battle in space. Literally, any Trigger show you can think of, it ends in a giant battle in space. Because Trigger. That's the joke. They knocked it out of the park with this. No space battles, no crazy shenanigans to be had. It's just a really good fantasy show with a great central cast, a fantastic gimmick that continues to build. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. They did something that wasn't a space thing. Well done, Trigger. This might be your best show. And and that says a lot, because you made Kill la Kill. And you know how important Kill la Kill is to the anime community. This may be better than Delicious in Dungeon. I'm calling it now. Delicious in Dungeon, better than Kill la Kill. This is Trigger's best show, and I will die on that hill. Delicious in Dungeon, the silver medal winner on my Ultimate 10. Now, okay. Before I get into number 1, I want to mention that number 1. I want to mention that while there are shows that will stand the test of time, there are shows that will resonate with you in all the right ways, that will tickle all of your tastes, all of your little crevices. They are the sugar that daddy likes. But you can't have a haul of the ultimate without... There needs to be a counterbalance. There needs to be something that... There needs to be a place for the opposite. The shows that aren't necessarily... Or they could just be shows that were absurd in different ways. Doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but just weird and dumb. And something you didn't really rate that well and didn't enjoy as much as everyone else did. It's all of these shows that deserve their own special category. They deserve to be cast into a place where only the insane dwell. And I'd like to call this place the Pit of Fools. And there are 2 shows. There are 2 anime. And I will start with the show that I rated the lowest this year. The first to be cast into the Pit of Fools is Plus-Sized Elf. The Plus-Sized Elf is a reverse isekai. It's a short, it's only half length, and I'm glad it is. It's about an elf who comes into the world, and she develops a fondness for chips, for French fries. And she realizes, over time she gets fat, and then she realizes, oh no, I can't go back to my world because I'm too fat to fit through the portal. So she stumbles over time, she gets fat, and then she realizes, oh no, I can't go back to my world because I'm too fat to fit through the portal. So she stumbles to a health club and meets the man who's the protagonist of the show, who is a personal trainer. And basically the whole concept of the show is magical creatures trying to get fit for various reasons. And I kind of hate it. For a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's not funny. It's meant to be funny. It's meant to be this comedy. I didn't really find it that funny. That's ultimately the cardinal sin of a comedy, is that if it's not funny, then you've failed at your one major goal. Well, actually, your one major goal. Well, actually, they had 2 major goals. The first one was trying and failing to be funny. The second was trying and failing to be sexy. This is an ecchi anime. And by ecchi, I mean ecchi. Like, this might as well be an And it makes sense it was on High Dive because they clearly love uncensored anime. Like, they are very proud. They will very proudly stream all of them. But there was a lot of instances where the characters will get naked and just full on tits and bums everywhere. And I get it's trying to be titillating. It's trying to be like, yep, this is an ecchi show. These are they're not they're not your standard like beautiful, perfect anime girl, sexy. I feel like they're trying to go for some sort of kink here. Like, it's trying to be like, this is clearly a show. It feels like its underlying thing is that it's a fat kink, like plus size kink. I shouldn't say fat, but then again, I am fat, so I guess I can say it. Only I get to use that word. I don't know, but yeah. So plus sized anime girls that just get full on naked all the time, and it's clearly trying to be this. It's trying to be fetishistic, but because the art style is so cartoony and the premise is so like meant to be haha funny, it's not titillating at all. It's not sexy at all. So it fails on two fronts. It's trying and failing to be funny, and it's trying and failing to be sexy. And ultimately none of them learn their. At least the central character doesn't learn her lesson. She keeps trying to lose weight, but then is always eating French fries and trying to make up excuses. And but shut up. Just shut up. Not funny. There's plenty of other characters as well, like that are magical beings. Like there's dark elves, and there's dragons, and there's halflings, and there's ogres, and there's one girl who's a dog. I mean, it's a werewolf, clearly, but like, just turns into a big fluffy doggy. There's cyclopses. There's I don't care about who else is in there, but just a swath of magical creatures, magical girls. There's cyclopses. There's I don't care about who else is in there, but just a swath of magical creatures, magical girls, losing weight, trying to anyway, and it tries to give health advice as well somewhere along the line, but ultimately no one learns their lesson, so what's the point? I feel like the short Anatore, if anyone remembers Anatore, about those little anime girls doing exercises, and is also like played off to be sexy, but at the same time it's kind of creepy because they're like these like little anime girls. So it's, but I feel like that was more helpful to people than this is. If you've seen that show, which I have, don't ask me why. I'm just trying to get exercise tips, I swear. But yeah, plus size elf did not like this show at all. Fight me on this. My dear friend Nokotan. This show was pure brain rot. I watched it for the meme. I thought, this is going to be dumb. I'm not going to go into this thinking too highly of it because it's purely designed to be brain rot. And I was right. It gave me more laughs than I expected or that I wanted, but they felt like hate chuckles. I was laughing at jokes that I shouldn't find funny, but did, because they were just so absurd. This show was the meme of 2024. Like, this was the meme show. Every year has at least one of the eight, rather than the core of the show itself. And Nokotan is that. I did like one character though, I will admit. I thought Bashame was really funny because she's just this little, just like there's nothing going on in her brain, but just she loves rice and is cute. I will admit that I like Bashame, but I will also admit she was really stupid. All the characters in this show are really stupid. Even especially the character that you think I'd resonate with the most, the social anxiety character, I thought was probably one of the most annoying. Because that you think I'd resonate with the most, the social anxiety character, I thought was probably one of the most annoying. Because there are characters that I'm like, oh my god, social anxiety, just like me for real. And I resonate with them because they do it. They depict social anxiety in a way that feels kind of real and relatable and funny. This borderlined on the absurd. Like, she was way over the top. And probably one of the characters I hated the most in the end. And then we come to Nokotan herself, who's just really just became, really just is what it is. She's just literal hollow brain that's just a deer. I don't want to talk about this show. Literal hollow brain that's just a deer. I don't want to talk about this show. I don't want to talk about this. It's making me feel terrible. It's killing me. I don't want to talk about this show more than I have to. Because we all saw it. It was probably one of the most popular shows of the year. And one of the most talked about shows. Because of the memes. But it was fine. It was fine. The animation was fine. The character designs were fine. But I can't rate it any higher than a 6. A 6 out of 10. Because I wanted to hate it, but I couldn't. I'll tell you the one joke. The one joke that I probably got the most out of me is I wanted to hate it, but I couldn't. I'll tell you the one joke. The one joke that I probably got the most out of me was, I think it was in episode 5. And granted, I was watching this at work. So, it made it even worse. They're having a fight with a group of... So the whole idea, if you've never seen this show, the main character was a former delinquent who became this wholesome, pure student body president. And the whole gimmick is she has to keep her secret, but Nokotan comes into her life and just tries to just ruin everything. So she's having a fight with these other delinquents, like a proper battle. And then Nokotan eventually said, she can remove her horns and do whatever. She removes one of her horns and says, here, take this. And she throws it, and it ends up on one of the roofs at the school and causes this gigantic explosion. And I just had to walk away. I walked away from my desk and I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm done. I'm so done. This was... Oh my god, I hate this so much. I hate that it made me laugh. I hate the show made me feel the things I felt. Ugh. Why? I'm casting you into the pit of fools because that's where you deserve to be, for ruining my brain. For just hurting my brain with this Now there is one other thing. There is one other thing I want to induct into this, but it's not an anime. But I feel like it has to be talked about just briefly. Now, I've mentioned time and time again, I talk about Yakuza a lot because it turns out it's one of my favorite game series of all time now. I didn't play it back in the day, but I got into it like later on during the PS4 era. And I've played almost every game. I've completed. There's only a couple that I'm missing out on. I think 3, 5, and Lost Judgment are the only games in the Yakuza series that I've yet to complete. I've played them, but I've yet to beat them. I've beaten everything else. So the story... Go watch Super Eye Patch Wolf's video on Yakuza. Like, for everything... He pretty much explains it in a way that I can't. But I just love these games. For everything, the sum of their parts. So when I found out that there was going to be a movie based on Yakuza, I was worried. Now I know they've done movies before. They did like a Japanese movie back in 2007 that was based on Yakuza 1. And they also did like a prequel or something. Like they've done a couple of movies in Japan. But this was going to be a Hollywood production. And I thought, oh boy. And then later on, like far down the line, I'm at a fish and chip shop, and I'm just scrolling on Twitter, adapted into a mini-series for Amazon Prime. And I thought to myself, the first thing I thought was, for the love of all that is holy, please, I'm begging you, do not screw this up. And I bring it up now because I'm sad to say that they screwed this up. Alright. So, Like a Dragon Yakuza, it's called that, weirdly. It does a couple of things well. First of all, I've got nothing against the actors. I think the guy who played Kiryu was okay. He was fine. Because I think he was a guy who did like Kamen Rider. He was an actor in Kamen Rider shows, and he's like just a popular Jap. Played Kiryu was okay. He was fine. Because I think he was a guy who did like Kamen Rider. He was an actor in Kamen Rider shows, and he's like just a popular Japanese actor. I thought he did fine. I thought the acting was okay. I got nothing against that. The thing I enjoyed the most was the setting. Again, it's Kamurocho. It's Kabukicho, man. You had to get at least that. You had to get that right, because I feel like Kamurocho is its own beast it feels very lived in. And the games are not about, it's an open world, but it's not about their size, it's about the density. It's only a few city blocks, but it feels so packed in and dense and lived in, and and the show nailed that. The show got that element right. You see the backgrounds, everyone's just hanging out, living the nightlife. The environments are pretty close. Like the actual setting is pretty close to what the games are. At least the early games. Like obviously the setting of Kamurocho evolves over time as the games go on, but you feel it. You feel, yes, this is Kamurocho. This is great. I love this. The setting, the background, the environments, great. They could not have gotten everything else more wrong. All I wanted in life was just a straight up, okay, what I actually wanted, my actual fantasy, if I had all the resources in the world to make it happen, I would have Yakuza be a long in the style of like One Piece, where obviously not as many episodes clearly, but like something that's just week after week and goes into different arcs and just goes through Kiryu's entire story and delves into the backstories of the other characters, as well, like Majima and Saijima and Dojima and all them. Like that. I just wanted just an anime show that just was basically just a 1-for-1 with the games. They captured all of their cartoonish absurdity, packed with the equal amounts of drama, and just combined them in a way that feels like a juxtaposition but works. That's all I wanted. And failing that, if they're going to do a live action show, play into the absurdity. They're going to do a live action show, play into the absurdity. Play into what makes these games what they are. And the original Japanese movie did that, where it was like kind of weird, but it did so in a way that felt like it paid respect to the games and what they were. The people who made this show, I have the suspicion they did not play the games at all. They played some of them, they played bits of it, but they ultimately didn't take away from what the games are. That's where they failed. They got some of the story elements right. They weirdly shifted the timeline. They made story elements that weren't present in the original games. The Millennium Tower especially looks dumb. They made story elements that weren't present in the original games. The Millennium Tower especially looks dumb. I did not like... I thought the Millennium Tower looked stupid. Yeah, as an adaptation, I ultimately think it failed. It tried to do its own thing, and I get it as a Yakuza style drama. It could have worked, but at that point, you might as well have just made an original Yakuza show. Take that show Tokyo Vice, for example. Just original, does its own thing, dramatic, Yakuza, shenanigans. Fine. Yeah. Just do that. Just do a show like Tokyo Vice. I'm sure it's absurdity, and you failed at it. That's where you went wrong. And that's what made it so disappointing, and that's why I hated it. This had to be a 1-for-1 straight adaptation of Yakuza, and it wasn't. And that's why I am casting Like a Dragon Yakuza for Amazon Prime, not just into the pit of fools, but into a special place in the pit of fools that I'd like to call the 16th Circle. Because you failed me. Anyone can get whatever they want out of it, but ultimately, when it comes to me and what I like, you failed me as a Yakuza fan. And that's why I don't like you. Into the 16th circle of the pit of fools you go. But for a show that failed at conveying the sum of its parts, we go to a show that absolutely succeeded and thrived and conquered because of the sum of its parts. It's time. It's time to finally announce the ultimate of ultimates. The number one, my anime of the year for 2024. Purely for everything it did and for the excitement and the joy that it got out of me. It didn't have to resonate with me on an emotional. It didn't resonate with me on everything it did and for the excitement and the joy that it got out of me. It didn't have to resonate with me on an emotional. It didn't resonate with me on an emotional level. It didn't resonate with me on these characters are relatable level, there wasn't drama. There wasn't any of that, those underlying themes. There wasn't like, it wasn't retrospective of me as a human. It wasn't, it was just pure fun, joy, excitement, action, animation, characters, chemistry, basically everything you could want in an anime. And it all moved together and it was perfect. At least to me. At least to me. My number one show of 2024 and the ultimate of the ultimates is DYNE. I know people are gonna look at me and think this show was problematic. At least the mainstream, the tourists are gonna turn to me and say, you know, it starts and ends with like implied rape scenes, right? Or almost like attempted rape. And it overly sexualizes the central female character and blah, blah, blah. Look, at the end of the day, if you're willing to get past all that, if you're willing to look past all of that, all of the controversy that is, and trust me, there has been quite a bit of and racist things and racism. Trust me. Somehow, the most talked about thing from this show on Twitter was the concept of racism. And how anyone who likes DYNE for what it is racist. But I ignored all of that. As a show. Okay. I'll compare this to Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man was another show that pretty much got the same thing out of me. Characters, I loved. The action, I loved. The grittiness, I loved. The edge of your seat intensity and just anxiety, I loved. There were moments of introspection and quietness that I loved. But ultimately, it was a show that I wish was longer. I wish was double length. Because DYNE did that for me, but even better. Because it combined so many different elements. The central pair, the chemistry between them two is wholesome and hilarious and just so great. The battles were great. The animation was on point. There were sequences in this show that just wowed me to the floor. They were often accompanied by the William Tell Overture. Like just orchestral music, long sequences of just fluid animation that just, I was like, wow, this is really fun. I have to talk about episode 7, of course, because they devoted and darkness and it was fantastic. That was the high point of the show, I feel. And a lot of people felt that way as well. Like the end of episode 7, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, watch the show and you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll feel it. Everything about it, everything about this show was perfect. And I just wanted it to keep going every week. When the credits rolled, the ED is a bop, but it's a frustrating bop. And whenever I hear that song now, it will give me PTSD because I'm like, no, the show ended. I have to wait a whole week. And especially at the very end of episode 12, at the end of the finale, the show was left on a cliff. I know there's more. I know there's more coming. And especially at the very end of episode 12, at the end of the finale, the show was left on a cliff. I know there's more. I know there's more coming. They're not going to end it there. But we have to wait for that. And when the credits rolled in the middle of that cliffhanger, I got so angry. Because I was like, no! The show's ending! And I want more. I want it now. I want you to feed DYNE into my everything. Just hook it to my veins. Shove it into my mouth. Put it into my butthole. Just get it into me somehow. I don't care. I'm a 32-year-old man. I'm about to turn 33. But this just gave me such childlike joy. Everything about it. I loved it. The humor, the action, the drama, the emotion, the animation, the fights. It was all just. It was the one show. The drama, the emotion, the animation, the fights. It was the one show where I look. Delicious in Dungeon, Girls Band Cry, Pseudo Harem. I love those shows. I love those shows very much. Salad Bowl, I loved. These were shows where I was like, yes, I enjoy these. I'd love to see more. But DYNE was the one show that left me actively frustrated that I had to wait for more. That's how you know you've got a good show. That's how you know you've got the best show. That's how you know you've got my anime of the year. Because you leave me hungry for more. And I don't want to wait for it. I will act like a petulant child. I want it and I want it now. It's the ultimate of the ultimates for 2024. What else can I say? I now have to wait 6 months for the continuation of this. And I'm going to be reading the manga. Because I just think it's great. And there are people that love the manga more than the anime, which is crazy because they're two very distinct elements, and there's only certain things that a manga can do, and there's only certain things an anime can do. But I will be enjoying them both. I will subscribe to Jump Plus so I can read DYNE. And I cannot wait for season 2 in July. Seriously. I wish it was a second core, at least, so I could just get more of it now, you know? If I was now, I'd be like, yep. That's it. That's ultimately it. That's why this show's the best, because it was like a drug. I couldn't get enough of it. That's why we will induct DYNE into the ultimate of the ultimates. It stands atop the upper echelon of the whole of the ultimate. It is my anime of 2024. Congratulations to all of our esteemed ultimate recipients. But a special congratulations to DYNE for being the best of the best. For being perfect. The perfect ultimate. That's what I'm calling it. A special congratulations to DYNE for being the best of the best. For being perfect. The perfect ultimate. That's what I'm calling it. Oh boy. That was nuts. I've realized I've gone for 2.5 hours. This is a very long podcast. But I feel like we're not done, by the way. Because there is still one more thing we have to talk about. Now, it's one thing for me to say these anime are my favorite. These are the best anime of the year. But I am a desperately lonely and horny otaku. So there's clearly one category. There's one list that is much more desperately lonely and horny otaku. So there's clearly one category. There's one list that is much more important than just the anime. And that is, who stands atop of 2024 as best girl? Coming in now, I will reveal to you my top 5 best girls of 2024. And at number 5, we have Marcel from Delicious in Dungeon. She was... Okay, so Marcel starts out Delicious in Dungeon as like the sort of Delicious in Dungeon. She was... Okay, so Marcel starts out Delicious in Dungeon as like the sort of... the audience stand-in, so to speak, who's commenting on the absurdity of, what, you're gonna eat monsters? What the hell? Like, that character. The audience stand-in, clearly there to react to the craziness of the situation. Right? But what makes her really good is that, like the other characters, like Laios, like Senshi, she develops over time, and you learn more of her background. You learn more of her motivations, and she becomes, as she gets into it and becomes more accustomed to their situation, her... I'm not going to delve too much into it if you haven't seen it, but her relationship with... her relationship with the character Fallon is... Besides Senshi, I feel like that's the other beating heart of the show. As much as... Okay, Fallon is Laios' sister, and ultimately that's meant to be like the... I have to save my sister. That's... Without delving into too much, that's the premise of the show. But Marcel and Fallon are the better pair. And that's also... I think that's also the pair that got shipped more. But I feel like that's the pair that's more emotionally, like, resonant. Because whenever Fallon's brought up, Marcel becomes this completely different character. Becomes much more emotional. Plus, she's cute, she's funny, and she's a magical elf. And the best elf character to come out in anime in 2024, or perhaps even earlier than that. Lol. Marcel, number 5. Number 4 is Momo Ayase from Dan to Dan. Talk about layered characters. She's really funny. Really funny. You think, oh yeah, she's... at the start, she's this like bitchy gyaru who's like, yeah, I don't think ghosts are real. Oh, I think ghosts are real. I don't think aliens are real, blah, blah, blah. She is hilarious. She's funny. She's badass with her psychic powers, and how, layered she... Takakura around her. Because then she'll get triggered, because how dare you, nerdy, specky fucknut, share a name with my middle-aged actor crush. Whatever. Yeah. Their budding romance and the awkwardness, because that's ultimately what makes that relationship work, is because they're just awkward. When it comes to those romantic moments, they're just awkward idiots around each other. Because they don't know what they're doing, but it just feels so realistic and wholesome and funny. But Momo is just like pure badass with her psychic powers and just being a really funny character that, yes, granted, gets sexualized a lot, but ultimately that's not why she's best girl. She's just fucking hilarious, and I love it. So yeah, Momo, number 4. Number 3 is Livia Deudis from A Solid Bowl of Eccentrics. Now, they've got weird names because they're from a fantasy world, but Livia is the main character. Sarah, it's her vanguard. It's her confidant. Her sort of like her right hand lady, so to speak. The badass, the one who starts out as sort of like the badass swordsman who comes to this world and has a very different, like, navigates it very differently compared to Sarah. She's just this world and has a very different, like, navigates it very differently compared to Sarah. I just love her so much because she's a dork who does not know about the world and starts out her life on Earth as a bum. She's homeless. She keeps getting into these wacky situations. Yeah, like, you saw my video. You saw my viral video. She's hot. She's a dork. She is my favorite thing from that show. She's number 3. Livia is number 3. Surprisingly, because they do other things. And number 2 is actually a bit of a... I'm breaking a bit of a rule here. Because number 2 isn't just one girl. Number 2, and I'll explain why. So, when I talked about Girls Band Cry, I talked about how the characters live through their struggles, who try to move on from trauma in their past and try to make things happen in the world with the new friends that they've made, and do so through music, through passion, and doing so in a realistic way that you struggle at times, but ultimately you face those struggles together. And the characters in Girls Band Cry all have is running away from her. She's moved to a new town. She's defying her parents. She's trying to strike out on her own. She faced a lot of bullying at her old school. She faced a lot of negativity. Whenever that negativity comes back, it makes her feel just frustration and anger and rage. And you can see it in the animation lines, the little red and black sort of particle effects that come out of her whenever she feels these dark thoughts. Momoka is having to try and get off the ground again, but is feeling very insecure. She's from a former idol band that wanted to strike out on her own with the music that she wrote, but is now struggling with the fact that she signed away all of the get off the ground again, but is feeling very insecure. She's from a former idol band that wanted to strike out on her own with the music that she wrote, but is now struggling with the fact that she signed away all of the rights to her song, and she feels like part of her identity has been lost, and is insecure and is unsure about facing a future because she's trying to be realistic. What if it doesn't work? And is very, very stubborn about it. Subaru is a girl who's got a lot of expectations on her because her grandmother is a famous actress, and she wants to... she finds this other passion. She doesn't want to be an actress. She doesn't want to follow in his footsteps. She wants to do other things. And she ultimately finds music. And she wants to be a musician, but she struggles with trying to... his footsteps. She wants to do other things. And she ultimately finds music. And she wants to be a musician, but she struggles with trying to come to terms with, okay, I'm going to have to tell my grandmother this. eventually. Yeah, she just wants to find her own path, and she struggles to do it. Tomo is facing a lot of negativity from her past because of all these expectations that were put on her. She was neglected as a child, and she is very blunt, and she's a tsundere, clearly. And she eventually, like, that bluntness has pushed people away, so she's very closed off because of that now. And now, you know, it's very hard to open up. Rupa, she lost both of her parents, and she's also facing a lot of racism. Let's just put it at that, because she's half South Asian, and you know what Japan's like. So she faces a lot of discrimination in her daily life. And, you know, obviously lost both her parents. Ultimately, the five girls are all girl failures in their own ways. But they eventually channel that trauma, the trauma that they have, they channel it through their music. But they're navigating this journey in a resonate with them and love them. And Nina is just a little gremlin. Momoko is just stubborn, but she's also hot and she drinks. So I think she was my favorite. Subaru is just a dork who just, like, is very sarcastic and pokes fun at people. Tomo's probably my least favorite of the five because, you know, just how I feel about tsunderes in general. And Rupa is just this, she's like clearly the mum of the group, but she's just doing her own thing, man. She's just beating to their own drum and just loving it, loving life. And she's probably got the best body as well. So, I am breaking my rule here in their own ways. But if you had to hold a gun to my head, and I had to pick, I had to pick one out of the five, it's Momoko. If I had to rank them, it would be from 5 to 1, Tomo, Subaru, Rupa, Nina, and Momoko. If you had to hold a gun to my head and I had to pick one of the five right now. But I love them all. But my best girl of 2024, she is ultimately more than just five girls. She can be all of the girls. She can be whatever you want. The girls. She can be whatever you want. My best girl of 2024 is Rin Nanakura from Pseudo Harem. She's just so great. I love her so much. She's just cute and lovable, and her voice actress, Sari Hayama, is perfect, and I love her voice. That's probably why I was excited, because Sari Hayama she's done a ton of voices, but she is the voice of Ayaka from Genshin Impact. And that's my wife right there. That's my Genshin wife. She also voices Yor from Genshin Impact. And that's my wife right there. That's my Genshin wife. She also voices Yor in Spy Family, but that's beside the point. I just love her voice so much, and she nailed it with just all these different personalities that she, that Rin, all the character tropes, the tsundere, the cool girl, the spoiled girl, the sort of playful, cheeky girl. Yeah, dude, what can I say? She's perfect. She's just, I love her. She's just pure, lovable goodness. And mainly why I love Pseudo Harem so much, because she carried the show, and the central pair of her and I've legitimately forgotten his name. Pure wholesomeness, and it's carried by Rin. Rin carries, and watching the show, I just felt like, that GIF, that Lego Batman, the GIF from the Lego Batman movie of Bruce Wayne, like it just pans onto his, like the camera just pans onto his face, and you just hear, "I just died in your arms tonight," like that bit, like, and how that's a GIF that people use everywhere when describing the feeling of, "Oh my God, I am in love with you. I am fascinated by everything that you are." Like that. That's what I felt looking at Rin. I am just fascinated by the sum of all your parts. And you are adorable, and I love you. That was it. That's purely it. And you can suffer as much. Is that the feeling of just love that you feel when you look at them? That's what being a best girl is all about. And that's why Rin tops. But ultimately, despite all of that, it's funny that you can be an elf girl with, who just reacts to things and is funny and cool, or you can be just this badass with psychic powers, or you could just be a dork trying to live your life, or you can be like a girl suffering through some real things, just trying to navigate life through your passions, or you can be somebody that just is just lovable and captures your heart. It's funny that despite all of that, in fact, the entire second half of 2024, with just this innate desire to have sexual relations with a rat. Number 0, best girl of 2024, Jane Doe from Zenless Zone Zero. And that is the end of this podcast. My links are in the description down below. Go enjoy my other episodes. I've got some reaction videos coming up this week, hopefully, of both Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. There's a direct from RGG, and also the special program version 1.5 of Zenless Zone Zero. Go check them out if they do materialize. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this double length or triple length podcast for the OTAKU Man Failure podcast. Yep, I just said that. I just said that out loud. I want to fuck a rat. I've spent most of this year with this innate desire to fuck a rat. Because I just want... You want to be best girl? You want to be the true best girl? All you have to do is one thing. Just step on me. That's all you need. It's probably why Makima will end up being best girl of 2025. Chainsaw Man, Rize Arc movie coming out soon. Best girl, step on me. 2025. Chainsaw Man, Rize Arc movie coming out soon. Best girl, step on me.